sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to the SS My Sister's a Therapist. I'm your captain. I'm a stand-up comedian, and I have a co-captain who is a therapist, and her name is Laura Ryan.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and first mate, but my main credit is sister to Quip Commander, Virginia Jones.
I'm your captain. You're my skipper. You're my Gilligan.
Oh, God. I don't know if that's a compliment.
Well, it's not really a compliment being the captain either.
And what if you're Tennille?
These are all good questions. Laura, on this podcast, every week one of us researches a topic and prepares something that they would like to talk about. And the other person just is along for the ride. This week, I'm settling back because I'm along for the ride.
Putting the old feet up.
Got my feet in the air. It's real chill. Laura, what is our topic this week?
Well, I'm out here working my fingers to the bone on our topic today. And that topic is near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of words for it, so I'm just going to throw some of them out there. Hot goss, tea, tattling. We're going to talk about gossip today.
This is one of my favorite things.
I remember I had a client in the past who was a therapist, as are many of my clients. And she said, I fear that I got into this career just because I'm nosy and I want the tea. And now I have to sit here all day and listen to people's problems.
To be a therapist, in order to get hot goss, you are hearing the most painful, the most complicated, the most secret parts of people's lives. But then by your license, you can't divulge it. So it's kind of terrible. If you are interested in having Laura as a therapist and you live in Texas, in the state of Texas, the state that was once a nation and will be again by grace of God, please contact her at her website, www.lauraryan.org. Not lauraryan.com. That's probably an OnlyFans person.
It's actually a swimmer, and I've been wanting the site for about 20 years and can't get it.
I have a similar story.
But we think she might have died. So the new form of gossip is TikTok. We used to have magazines. I used to love some Us Weekly or US Weekly, however you want to pronounce it.
Right. Any of the glossy celeb mags.
That was how I spent my lunch hour. But now we're just telling each other's trash on the internet. This is from a creator named Ashley. The title was, I'm bored. Tell me your hometown's juiciest scandal. Chloe says, my boyfriend and his brothers were delivered via C-section by a man who was never a doctor. He forged paperwork of a deceased doctor and practiced for years before getting caught.
That's a real Don Draper situation.
But that's some hot goss.
That's some hot goss. One time I did a show in a small town in Oregon, and after the show, people walked up to me and said, good, sad, or whatever their opinion was. They pointed out to me two men in the crowd and they said, those are brothers and they bang each other. And I said, okay. And then my husband at the time came up to me and said, everyone's been telling me that those guys are brothers and they bang each other. Apparently it's the big news. I said, one, I'm sure that that's not true. And two, even if it is true, you could just go to Portland. There's plenty of guys to bang there.
Yeah, but none of them are my brother.
Blech. I think it was just homophobic gossip.
Here's the second one. Our local florist would deliver flowers at the wedding and then head back to the wedding couple's house to steal what they could.
Wow.
It's good stuff. Gossip is a part of our culture, but a lot of people think it's a part of our DNA. From the article, Why You Were Born to Gossip by David Ludden, PhD. In the primate world, friendships are maintained through the practice of picking fleas and dirt from the fur of other members in the group. Known as social grooming, it's quite literally a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of relationship. Although grooming does serve a hygienic purpose, cleaning the fur and skin of insects and debris also solidifies friendships.
I've seen my boyfriend's birds do it. There's two birds who are very much dating. They're very seriously dating. And he will pick little feathers off of her and preen her feathers. And it's very, very sweet.
But if he liked it, he should have put a ring on it.
Exactly. He did put a tiny little metal bracelet on her foot, but they all have that. I will tell you that being raised Christian, I was told not to gossip, not to talk negatively about others, but it is so delicious to do so. I would like to do that more than almost anything else. And part of it is not just that you're bonding to other people, but it is social currency in the same way that jokes are social currency. When you hear a really good mother-in-law joke, you just can't wait to tell the guys at work because it gets you somewhere in your pecking order.
Well, it's a way of connecting.
Instead of picking nits off of each other, humans engage in social grooming, doing each other's hair, primping each other's clothes. If you like someone, you'll pick a piece of dust off their jacket. You'll tell them they have lipstick on their teeth or something similar. It shows that you care. But we have found an easier, more effective way of building and maintaining relationships: idle chit chat. For us, gossip serves the same purpose of social network building as does mutual grooming for chimpanzees. When you meet another comedian, you ask about the people you don't like to see if they also don't like them, and then you can gossip about them. It's very important. I very rarely gossip about people in a positive way. If someone brings up someone I really like, I will say something nice, but it's not as fun as talking about a mutual that you dislike.
I was actually looking for this article that I read many, many years ago in Psychology Today. But basically the finding was if you're at the water cooler, you're going to feel a lot more bonded to a person who's talking smack. They used the example of Britney Spears. This was, of course, before we knew all the things. They were saying talking smack about Britney Spears is going to make you feel a lot closer to someone than good things about the workplace because you're actually taking a social risk. And if the other person is connecting to that, that means that you are safe.
And the celebrity magazines that you love, there's one in my lunchroom at work that is from November 2024. I recently looked at it and said, great, I'm all caught up on all the gossip
From last
year. I'm up to date. It's a whole business, obviously. Websites have been built on it. Careers have been built on it. Your brain thinks that you know them. You got that parasocial thing going. You know what the side of their face looks like. You can recognize the back of them in a crowd or in a photograph. There's no real risk because the person isn't going to turn to you and say, well, actually, that's my dad.
I feel like because our societies are so disjointed and disconnected, the story that I make up is that celebrity gossip emerged because we don't have close-knit communities anymore. We can't talk about the woman down the street or our hairdresser
because you've moved 2,000 miles from where you were born to work for a corporation that doesn't care for you. If you live in the same place your whole life, you have this rich blanket of gossip because you know everybody you've ever known.
In our ancestral communities, I really feel like, 125 people max that you would know?
So you would know everything about those people. And I think that that's a pretty deep well for hot goss.
Right.
And crazy things happen in people's lives, and then they just keep living them. And that just becomes one of many things you know about a person. Sure, at one point he robbed a bank. Later, he married his wife's sister. But now he just works at the shoe store and it's fine. Everybody has these crazy stories, some people crazier than others. When you know everything about a person, that just becomes one of a lot of traits, I think.
So we're going to read from Explaining the Evolution of Gossip by Michele Gelfand. In modern societies, people are estimated to spend approximately an hour per day gossiping. Though individual differences exist, almost everyone gossips, young and old, women and men, rich and poor, and across all personality types. Gossip disseminates information about people's reputation and as such enables people to choose to help cooperative others and avoid being exploited by selfish ones, a mechanism that is widely studied as indirect reciprocity that sustains cooperation.
A gossiper can deter individuals from acting selfishly by making it known that their reputations will be spread to others, which manifests as the, quote, selfishness deterrence function of gossip. It's the mutually assured destruction, right? If you tell someone something that I told you, I'm going to let everybody know that you're the gossip. You're the bad person. And that's another bond. It's a little lower on the scale than committing a murder together. It's that same taboo. You better not say this thing that I've said to you, or else I'm going to let people know that you can't be trusted.
Yeah. And then you end up being part of the out group because you're a gossiper and you're telling people about my secrets.
I want you to tell me about other people's secrets or your own.
Right.
I don't want you to tell people about mine.
There's an interesting thing that I got from TikTok. This was a man named Josh, and this is a quote from his TikTok. The reason you were taught that gossiping is bad was because gossiping was a way that women spread information about which men are safe and which men are unsafe. So the patriarchy decided to make gossip a bad thing and something that only bad women do. But really, it was just so that you didn't know which ones were safe.
1, men gossip just as much as women, if not more. But 2, men like to talk about how much women gossip because they're worried they're being talked about. So if they can just discount this person's entire presence as a gossip, then they can have a little bit of safety from the idea that she's going to be talking smack about you.
I find also some of the things that are considered taboo or tacky that we're not supposed to talk about, not supposed to talk about sex, religion, politics, or even our salaries. And I feel like all of those things are things we need to know. Because if you think about a 1930s housewife, maybe her husband is doing all kinds of weird stuff. She needs to know that that's maybe not normal, or that maybe other women aren't putting up with that kind of thing.
Or just, committing atrocities with livestock. The divine origin of the word gossip, written by Sanne, Cheney-Steijger. I think that sometimes Laura gives me things because they have the hardest names to say.
Yeah. That's accurate.
Gossip is the corruption of the word godsib or godsibling, referring to godparents and close kin. By the 1700s, gossip came to refer specifically to women who attended births in groups. These gossips, invited by the expectant mother, were typically her female relatives and close friends. Their role extended beyond the birth itself. They undertook the preparation of the birthing space, welcomed the new arrival, who is a baby, looked after siblings, because God knows the dad isn't doing it, and provided both practical and emotional assistance to the other woman. Additionally, gossips continued their support during the postnatal lying-in period, aiding with household chores and childcare. So this is an amazing group phenomenon. Women in their time of greatest need, other women come to them and step up. And those women talk mad hit. This is a female space where men are not allowed. Women would talk about whose husband was unfaithful, who had been doing bad business dealings. They would talk about everything in their lives. And guess what? Men did not like it.
Because it was one of the few spaces where women had complete autonomy, where men were not allowed.
Because the rest of her life, she's in her house taking care of her kids, or she's with her husband. They didn't have a nail salon. They didn't have a hair shop. This was their space to really let it all out. And some of it was a baby.
In the villages and towns of Western Europe, a wave of male hostility towards childbirth ceremony emerged. This resistance stemmed from women gathering behind closed doors for extended periods, triggering concerns about neglecting domestic duties and fostering suspicions among husbands about the nature of their conversations. The postnatal period, marked by women celebrating the birth with alcohol and merriment, became a focal point of scrutiny. In response to these cultural shifts, particularly during the late 16th century, various town governments in England attempted to regulate women's birthing festivities, especially during this lying-in period. God forbid a woman wants to have a drink with her friends.
It's the worst. And when you think about any female gathering, a book club, at the hair salon, sewing bee, whatever it is, these social gatherings that are important to a woman's mental health and strength of friendships are looked down upon immensely. Oh, your little coffee clutch. Oh, your little bridge club.
Your little knitting circle.
Yeah, everything that women do kind of stinks and is stupid because women are not important.
I think it's because women who talk to each other
are going to find out stuff
and are dangerous. As I was doing research for this, there was all this stuff about pre-16th century that women would actually go out and gaggle together and meet at a wine bar and hang out together. And they had a lot more independence, and people started getting nervous, and there was a big backlash.
Wow. Okay. Rooted in the word godsib, the word gossip underwent a transformation that mirrors the broader historical trend of diminishing the importance of women's spaces and experience. No longer a symbol of divine kinship, in the hardest time of a woman's life, probably, and a time where she is likely to die. It's a high-stakes time, childbirth. Gossip has been reduced to a term associated with trivial chatter and tittle-tattle. The shift in the approach towards gossips is well illustrated in this poem written in the 16th century called Tittle-Tattle. Then gossips all a warning take. Pray, cease your tongue to rattle. Go knit and sew and brew and bake and leave off tittle-tattle. If there's time to lean, there's time to clean.
Go get deep in that domestic labor and stop talking to your friends.
I don't like it.
Go knit and sew and brew and bake.
It's just another way that women are minimized and our concerns are dismissed, and we've been controlled throughout the ages.
Right.
My favorite group of people to not necessarily gossip with, but to listen to the gossip of is little kids, because they don't know anything. And most of their gossip is straight BS. I don't believe that Rodney's dad is an astronaut, okay? We live in Phoenix. I don't believe that so-and-so's mother makes her a giant birthday cake every day. the desire to share and disseminate information is so strong, but they don't know what's normal in society. So it just gets wild.
There's a guy on TikTok who's a pre-K teacher, and he tells stories that children have said to him, which are very inappropriate about their parents. They are spilling the tea in really inappropriate ways.
When they say little pitchers have big ears, what they mean is if you let your kid know anything that they don't need to know about your personal life with your spouse that you think is private, they're going to tell a teacher.
They're also apparently going to tell a teacher about illegal substances that you keep in your...
Kids can tell when something is charged, when something is a secret, when something has extra meaning behind it. And they can't wait to disseminate that because we are gossips.
I really do feel like it's a desire to connect, and it's the most natural thing. So now I'm going to read from SILVIA FEDERICI's article, How the Demonization of Gossip is Used to Break Women's Solidarity. Attaching a denigrating meaning to the term indicating friendship among women served to destroy the female sociality that had prevailed in the Middle Ages, when most activities women performed were of a collective nature, and in the lower classes at least, women formed a tightly knit community that was a source of strength unmatched in this modern era.
By the 16th century, women's social position had begun to deteriorate, satire giving way to what, without exaggeration, can be described as a war on women, especially of the lower classes, reflected in the increasing number of attacks on women as scolds and domineering wives and of witchcraft accusations. Along with this development, we begin to see a change in the meaning of gossip, increasingly designating a woman engaging in idle talk. And there is a class distinction here, because when a rich woman gossips, it's at a salon. It's at a meeting of minds.
It's at a high tea.
It's at a dinner party. But the things that the washerwomen are doing in the streets is just gossiping.
In 1602, when Samuel Rowlands wrote "'Tis Merry When Gossips Meet," a satirical piece describing 3 London women spending hours in a tavern talking about men and marriages, the word was still used to signify female friendships, implying that women could create their social networks and their own social space and stand up to male authority. But as the century progressed, the word's negative connotation became a prevalent one. As mentioned, this transformation went hand in hand with the strengthening patriarchal authority in the family and women's exclusion from crafts and guilds, which, combined with the process of enclosures, led to the feminization of poverty.
I've been having an argument with incels on TikTok this week.
As we all are.
Because someone posted that women need men, and I'm like, for what? And the first incel who stepped up to me said, "Who built your house? Who built your car? Who built your phone? Not women." There's a reason for that. Women have been excluded from higher education, guild work, from apprenticeships. The reason that brewing and witchcraft, having a cauldron, became a thing was that one of the few jobs that women could do in the Middle Ages and make money from was brewing beer.
Not just women, single women.
It's not a coincidence that men have done all the work. Women have been excluded from it until the last 45 minutes where we stood up and said, "Hey, I would like to have a job."
I think it's important to realize when we say things about groups that are not white men, the reason that these groups have not thrived is because they have been actively oppressed and removed from the room where it happens, as they say in Hamilton. When I'm taken out of every decision-making process, when I'm removed from any opportunity to better myself or educate myself, in certain countries, they're not letting little girls go to school. Why is that?
Yeah, and that just continues the cycle.
And I think a lot of looking at gossip as idle chatter and silliness and stupidness of women, it's about taking away our autonomy. It's about keeping us from being a part of society.
And we were just talking about this before we started recording, that when you give a group a name, especially a pejorative name like gossip or scold or feminazi or illegal, you dehumanize them.
Right.
And you make it okay to treat them as lesser, to exclude them from society because you've put them in this little box.
Virginia, you've been to the Tower of London.
I sure have.
Well, one thing that I found when I was visiting the Tower of London, you could see an actual scold's bridle. If you're interested, you can find it in the area where all of the suits of armor are. And it's a little glass box. And I was looking at it, I thought, what on earth is that? And then I read the description and was horrified.
It's also called a Brank's bridle or a gossip's bridle. It's like something you would put on a horse, but you would put it on a lady You'd strap it onto her head, and it was studded with spikes so that if you tried to speak, it inflicted pain and made speaking impossible. This torture instrument was designated as a punishment for women of lower classes who were deemed nags or scolds or riotous and who were often suspected of witchcraft. Wives who were seen as witches, shrews, and scolds were also forced to wear it locked onto their heads. It was often called the gossip bridle, testifying to the change in the meaning of the term. I have seen these things in life and in books, and I have lived in fear because I talk a lot and I talk a lot of S-hit. And I can very easily imagine myself in a different time being the kind of woman who would be fitted for a bridal.
I know that I would. Apparently, they would take women out in the streets who had gossiped and march them around with this bridle on their heads. In 1547, a proclamation was issued forbidding women to meet together to babble and talk, and ordering husbands to, quote, keep their wives in their houses, end quote. Female friendships were one of the targets of the witch hunts, and in the course of the trials, accused women were forced under torture to denounce each other, friends turning in friends, daughters turning in mothers. Gossip is an integral part of the devaluation of women's personality and work, especially domestic work, reputedly the ideal terrain on which this practice flourishes.
As we look at the list of people who would get this kind of treatment, nags or scolds. Now, this is just a woman who wants her husband to do something. How dare you?
And a nag is an old horse, right? Who's about to be sent to the glue factory.
Aren't we all?
So our mother, one of our listeners recently criticized the fact that I will sometimes say your mother. It's our mother.
Right? We share her.
We share her. Our mother was recently telling me some gossip about her community, and she was talking about a woman whose husband has some health concerns, wants to just eat desserts for every meal. Our mother was complaining that this woman is just nagging and nagging.
She's trying to get him to eat food that will nourish his body and not make him sicker. That is a terrible thing for her to do.
The fact that she feels like she has to do that is really sad to me. Virginia, you're going to read now from Ashley's post. I'm bored. Tell me your hometown's juiciest scandal.
All right. High school teacher taught a math lesson by using his hypothetical assassination of Obama, who was in office at the time, drew angles on the board for where he'd stand to shoot. FBI removed him from class next day. I don't know if it was the FBI, but I'm sure he was removed from class.
To quote my mother, can you imagine?
I was taught world history by a football coach. In Texas, you would hire a football coach and then you wouldn't know what to do with them for the rest of the time. They'd frequently teach history or, more horribly, health class.
Also, P.S. in history, that is where I learned that the leader of China was named Mao Zedong by my coach.
Gotcha. My coach told us that Alexander the Great could not have conquered most of the known world because he was gay.
So he got it.
He got it. We've also got a 33-year-old woman stole her daughter's identity and went to my high school, did cheerleading, took classes, went to parties. Item 1, where was her daughter? Item 2, very believable. When you turn 40 as a woman, you have no worth. You're just a used up piece of gum stuck on the bottom of somebody's shoe. So why wouldn't you try to be a high schooler for longer? Having someone at a restaurant who's a host or a waiter say, you and your daughter look like sisters, is the highest compliment you can pay a woman because that means she still has some worth.
I have another from the same list. Slacia says, a high school teacher once fully bugged another teacher's room trying to catch her mistreating her daughter in class and ended up catching the other teacher in a relationship with a student.
When you said, oh, it's the hottest gossip from every town, I thought to myself in my brain, it's going to be 100% volleyball coaches marrying a high school student. That's what it's going to be.
Especially if it's a small town. I was thinking a lot of these are high school oriented, but it's probably because of the users of TikTok are going to be relatively young. This is another one from Miss Little Widow. There was a friendly guy who was nice to everyone in our town, lives next to my house. FBI raided his house and found human cages and chains in the basement, among other things I can't describe here.
Hashtag goals. We've got Denise Martinez. A restaurant near my house is a family-owned business, and the husband cheated on his wife with one of the waitresses. So now everyone employed there is a guy, and he cheated again with a guy working there. This is someone who has, one, a lot of problems with power structures.
He also has trouble with
Fidelity.
monogamy.
But also, this makes me sad because when our grandfather was unfaithful to our grandmother, her solution was to move towns because there wouldn't be.
He
she was
can't
like,
get on a bus.
The idea that like it's just this one woman, putting the blame on the woman and be like, well, it's because she's here. There's always going to be another one.
To be fair, by the time they moved towns, it was many more than one woman.
Several. We've also got OT. Our local Catholic school was run by 2 nuns who went to prison for stealing tuition money for 20 years to pay for their gambling addiction. It was like $1 million. Nuns gotta have funds, you know? And nuns gotta have fun to have fun.
Have funds.
You don't get to express yourself with your clothing. You don't get to express your sexuality. You have to steal money to go gambling. Can you imagine seeing nuns at a casino? That would be great and sad.
That would be a life highlight. I think I would enjoy that tremendously. Godzilla said, when my aunt died, her kids found birth certificates of babies that she had after my 5 cousins were born and gave up for adoption. Nobody remembers any of these pregnancies or seeing her pregnant. What?
Delta says, my sister had a kid at 15 and let her teacher and his wife adopt it. We got her daughter an ancestry kit because she wanted to find out who her dad is. Her dad was the teacher that adopted her. Oh, that's a weird coinky dink. Shocker. That's a shocker. Oh, who had sex with a 15-year-old? Oh, the guy who stepped up and said, I'll adopt your kid because I'm a good guy.
I was also wondering about that guy. Did his wife not notice?
Any similarity?
This kid really looks a lot like my husband, and he has the same stutter.
At Idle 23 says, my great-grandmother used to host tea parties and grow a lot of teas in the late 1800s. No one really suspected anything until they found her notebook in the floorboard of her house. Apparently, she was helping women and their pregnancies. And there are teas that you can use to do that. And that's a lot of what witches would do, which is another reason people don't like witches.
And when you say what witches would do, what you really mean is herbalists, women in the community. But then they were called witches because they were doing things that people didn't like. Mrs. Yeager says, thanks to Ancestry DNA, we found out my great-grandfather had a huge second family / double life. Jewish in one, Catholic in another. My mother gained 62 second cousins in one day.
Wow. Crossing the religious lines. That's really interesting.
I mean, that's really something.
I mean, that's a lot of stuff to keep track of.
Dedication.
Is this a holiday with this family or not?
Yeah, exactly.
When you hear about men who have secret second families, it just speaks to how little men do for their families. What woman could have a secret second family when she is working for her first family 24 hours a day?
I would say 23 because sometimes she's got to take a shower.
Speaking of Ancestry.com, when we were all locked up, I spent some time looking at my ancestry, and I found that, one, the reason our family has so many genetic pointers to County Mayo in Ireland is that on my father's side, my great-great-great-grandfather and my great-great-great-grandmother were both from County Mayo, and they met in Kansas. They found another person from their frickin' hometown and said, let's get married.
I feel like that's what happened with Conan O'Brien, right? His family tree is a line.
Right. One of the stories I found was one of my great-greats somewhere was a gentleman farmer, and he had a lot of money in the community in Missouri. Stuff would get written up about him in the paper. So there's a lot of stories about his life just because he was prominent in the community. When he nearly cut his thumb off in a harvester, that was documented. He lost his wife in childbirth, pretty common thing. And then he brought a much younger woman into his life that he had a letter correspondence with. She moved in and he started getting sicker and sicker. His brother came to visit and took him away out of the house for a couple of weeks, and he got better. And they found that his bride had been slowly poisoning him. So that was in the papers.
That's some pretty hot goss. I feel like a lot of our podcast is just spilling the tea on our family.
That's true. We've done a lot of it. My boyfriend at the time found a really good one. His last name was very unusual, so you could find him pretty readily, people related to him. And he had, in Bonnie and Clyde times in the 20s, a serial killer in his family who went around with his female partner, killed people and took their money. When he went to trial, she got off because she was like, oh, it's all him. But I remember in his trial and perhaps at his execution, his last words were, well, it's just as well she goes free, I guess. But she was just as much of those murders as I was.
I just thought of a hot goss. I remember our great grandmother was about 8 months pregnant with her daughter. She was helping out at the pharmacy where her husband worked, and a very young woman came in her 20s or something. Tell we'll call him Luigi because that's what
Right.
everyone in our family called him. Tell Luigi he's going to be a father. And she said, yeah, I know. No, he's going to be my baby's father.
That's how she found out. Pretty fun. And then he took his second family and I believe moved back to Rhode Island.
My Gigi, this is from Ashley K623 on the post filling my cup with the family tea. My Gigi may or may not have hit her first husband in the head with a frying pan and dragged him to the yard. She said he fell fixing the roof. He survived World War II, but not Lola is the joke now that she's resting peacefully.
Wow. He did something to deserve that. I don't believe in victim blaming except for that. I've got one. There was a serial unaliver in Montana who would deliver furniture, leave something behind, come back after dark, and then serial murder people. He came to my grandmother's and tried to leave behind his sunglasses. She grabbed them and chased him down the road to give him his sunglasses back. He said he didn't want them and tried to leave, but she threw them at him and said they're his and she didn't want them and to have a good day. And she saved our family. It was the Missoula Mauler.
From Brom Queen, my mother divorced my dad, married his best friend. He died of cancer. My mom inherited all of his money and then remarried my dad.
She had a type. One of my friends, when her parents' marriage ended, when she was a young adult, her mother started a relationship with her mother's own cousin, which is not great.
Unless you're Henry VIII.
Her father, instead of divorcing her, tried to get a 20-year marriage annulled based on the idea that she had always been in love with her cousin and that their marriage was a farce. And also annulment was cheaper. God bless. At Cassie Baker says, my grandma wrote a 300-page double-sided book on printer paper about all the ways her children and their spouses had wronged her and made a copy for each of them and left it in their mailboxes. Hashtag big narc energy.
I love that for her. Someday I'll do it too. Virginia, what are your final thoughts on the topic of gossip?
I don't think that pronouncing it that way is going to catch on. I think you're going to spend a lot of time explaining yourself and you're going to feel pretty silly. I find it interesting. So much of religion is telling women not to gossip, and so much of society tells us not to gossip. I actually think that celebrity gossip magazines are, one, harmless gossip, but two, it's because we don't have a royal family, because the English love to talk about the royal family, and we just don't have that. So we have Real Housewives of Orange County. I find it interesting that gossip is both a social lubricant, something that humans are born to do and prone to do, and yet when women do it, it's bad. I wonder if there's any other examples like that.
Probably not.
Laura, what are your final thoughts on gossip?
I think calling it gossip and making it a dirty word is part of women's oppression.
But it also makes it delicious, don't you think?
I don't know. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. Refer back to our No New Friends episode. I think it's really important that we build female friendships with each other. I think it's really important that we develop communities outside of the cis-het construct of couples only. I think it's really important that women share everything, including their salaries, health concerns, etc. Because I have found in these little clutches, this is where I have gotten a lot of really helpful information. And I think when we cut that off, we are cutting off women's information channels. Right. Yeah. And I feel like this is why they were trying to shut down TikTok, because I think a lot of TikTok is women spilling the tea on different groups, different people, etc.
TikTok also is the source of a lot of historical information and political information that just isn't covered. It's not the version that you get when you're taught by your football coach. For example, I didn't know what Juneteenth was until I was in college, because why would he talk about it?
Taylor from Kentucky didn't care about Juneteenth. He had bigger fish to fry, metaphorically and physically.
I have to think carefully about this because I have gotten in trouble for gossip before. I have lost friendships because I have talked mad hit. I'm better at it than I used to be. But also, most of the times when I got in trouble for gossiping, it was because I was saying so-and-so is a sexual assaulter, so-and-so is unfaithful. And guess what? Those people don't like that.
When you say so-and-so, are you referring to men?
It has mostly been men. Laura, if people are interested in what you have to say on TikTok, which is a lot about this podcast, where can they find you on the internet?
They can find me on TikTok at I am Laura Ryan. They can also find me at my professional website, lauraryan.org. If they're interested in finding out more about the show, they can go to our Instagram page, My Sister's a Therapist. You can always check out our website, mysister'satherapist.com, and look at every episode of our show. Virginia, if people wanted to find out more about you professionally, where would they go about doing that?
You can find me at my website, which is www.badinia.com. I maintain a calendar there, and I do shows in and around Portland and occasionally other places. If you live in Oregon, you can definitely see me. You can check out my TikTok at Badinia, and my Instagram is Badinia. If you enjoyed this show and you thought, I have a topic that these chicks would like to have a go at, or I have a note or a comment or a compliment, you can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you have a job opportunity for us, a sponsorship, something where you would like to give us money in exchange for something else that we can think about doing, you can write us at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, now is the time of the podcast where you sometimes read a letter, a comment, a review from a fan. Do you have something to share this week?
I certainly do. And before I share it, I want to let everyone know that you need to tell your hairdresser, the person who trims your toenails, the stranger on the subway that you listen to My Sister's a Therapist podcast and you love it.
Introduce yourself. You go, hi, I'm Virginia Jones, and I listen to My Sister's a Therapist. And people go, oh, that's interesting. What's that? Well, it's a show about two sisters, one of whom is a therapist. Just try that. See where it leads you.
Tell everyone your name is Virginia Jones and see where that leads you. They say that, like your children, you should never admit that one of your podcast reviews is your favorite. But
They do say that.
This may be my favorite review so far. Not to diminish the many, many beautiful reviews we've received.
We love all of you.
This is from Eat Beans, Not Beings. And the title is My Favorite Podcast.
Oh,
That's my favorite thing. I can listen to you two talk about anything. Thank you for what you do. I found every episode to be helpful, informative, entertaining, all the things. I found you a year ago when attending comedy at the park. Virginia delivered a great stand-up set. By the way, the weekly episode art is amazing. I don't know another podcast that takes the time to do that. Love you.
one, thank you for the beautiful review. That is so nice. And that is so lovely that I did a set in a park and we have gained a friend. Two, Laura does the podcast art. She spends a lot of time on it. She is addicted to AI. She has a problem, but there's no treatment for that yet. So every week we get unique cover art.
I also agree that we should eat beans, not beings. And I want to say, yes, I put an awful lot of effort into the cover art. And this is the first time I've ever been validated for my efforts.
But
usually she says, that's weird. Try again.
And we would like to welcome our 14 new listeners to the podcast fresh this week. We appreciate you. You are seen. If you enjoy the podcast, we would love, LOVE, for you to write us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, anywhere else that you would like. It all helps towards bringing our podcast to more people. And we will read it on the show. In closing, I would like to thank all of you for listening. And I would like to leave you with the words of our founder, Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn. As he said, we can make it, baby.
Me and you.
Bye-bye.